President Trump getting tough on terror after more than 300 worshipers were killed at an Egyptian mosque. On Twitter, the president made a renewed call for the wall and a travel ban, his travel ban, to keep America safe. So here with more on all of that, senior fellow at the Hudson Institute, Rebeccah Heinrichs. Rebeccah, thanks for coming in on this holiday weekend. Appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
So what do you make of the President Trump's tweet? An appropriate time to be calling for his wall and travel ban?
Yeah, I mean, what he's talking about is he wants to keep the border safe for the United States. And we've got this war against Islamist extremism, and it doesn't really have borders. It can, it travels in the minds of people. And so we've seen this, the terrorist attack in Egypt, of course. El-Sisi is trying to crack down. He's trying to, he's got a multiple front of Islamists who are causing problems from Al-Qaeda and ISIS. And so what President Trump really needs to do at this point is demonstrate the solidarity and support with Sisi, with the Sisi government, as it tries to work with neighboring countries. It's working with the Israelis to try to crack down on what we're seeing is this ISIS increasingly growing in the Sinai Peninsula.
So President Trump spoke with the Egyptian president yesterday, offered his support, but do you believe that he needs to be doing more, offering even more support to the Egyptian president?
The United States does supports, I believe it's the second greatest military aid package that goes to the Egyptians next to the Israelis. And this year, it was interesting, the State Department announced we're going to be withholding some of the aid we generally give on the condition because of some human rights violations of Sisi. This goes sort of crossways with what the Trump administration has been doing, which is saying that the best thing we can do for human rights is to counter Islamist radicals. And until we can combat Islamist radicals, we're not going to be able to deal with human rights problems. So, I really think the Trump administration needs to square this circle. Even Rex Tillerson has said that we're not going to put human rights first. We're going to crack down on Islamists. And so it doesn't really make sense. So if the Trump administration is serious about this, I would recommend that they go back to the State Department and look at what they're doing and saying and back fully the Sisi government so that he can do what needs to be done to protect minorities. He's been protecting the Coptic Christians, which account for about 10% of the population, but they're about 90% of the Christians there, and protect these Muslim, groups that are in minorities and that are peaceful. And so the Trump administration really needs to take a look at this aid package again.
We know that a lot of these attackers were carrying ISIS flags, but we've heard so much about ISIS being on its heels. What does this attack in Egypt, the worst in the country's history, say to you about ISIS's capabilities, even though it's been hit back so much in recent weeks and months?
Sure. As the United States and our allies really crack down in Iraq and in Syria, you're going to see ISIS move. And so what we're looking at now is perhaps because of this uptick in attacks in the Sinai, that perhaps they've just moved and they're trying to hold and take territory there. That's why it's in the U.S. interest to cooperate with Sisi and to make sure that this doesn't become the next widespread battleground.
So switching gears to Saudi Arabia and Iran, this has become such a huge hotspot in recent days after the Saudis charged Iran with an act of war. A missile came very close to the Saudi capital. How hot is this getting?
Well, it's getting hot. And again, during the Obama administration, one of the sort of centerpieces of the Obama foreign policy was to legitimize Iran and to sort of, before it was isolated. And now they try to legitimize the Iran. That's why you had the Iran deal. And as a result, the Iranians were flush with cash, and it continued to support terrorism throughout the region. One of the groups it supports are the Houthi rebels in Yemen. That's the group responsible for shooting this missile towards the Saudis. Thankfully, the Saudis have a missile defense system, their Patriot batteries that the United States made, and they intercepted the missile, which is remarkable. But again, this is we're dealing with now sort of the fallout of the Obama foreign policy. And so the Trump administration is trying to embolden now Iran's adversaries, which are the Saudis, and corner Iran again and sort of isolate them to sort of, try to dry up some of these funds that it's using to terrorize the region.
Well, and you also had this week the Saudi crown prince calling Iran's supreme leader the new Hitler of the Middle East. I mean, that's a pretty bold accusation. Do you think we're going to hear anything from the White House about that?
Well, the Iranians, they still are run by this Islamist ideology, the IRGC, that the Treasury Department has now said as it supports terrorism. They're anti-Israel. They paint death to Israel on their missiles when they test missiles. So it makes sense that this regime would be compared to another anti-Jewish regime, and it certainly makes sense.
Well, and the Saudi crown prince saying that Iran needs to be confronted. So pretty hot region. Thank you so much for being with us, Rebeccah. Appreciate it.